Okay, well, it's after 2, so we're going to start. The warm-up I have today is not as interactive as some of the other ones that we have done. But this can be a nice activity for warm-up, especially if it becomes something you do often. They sort of get into the routine of doing this. And here in the United States, it's called morning message, the idea of it. But, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be in the morning. It would just be the first thing that you do at the start of a class. And it's a good way to, like, introduce new topics and new vocabulary, and especially by repeating certain things, so having them get in the habit of discussing the weather, for example, through the morning message, and the days of the week, and the months, and numbers, and all of those things can sort of be built into it. Also, if you have students who are a little crazy when they come into the class, a high energy warm-up might not always be the best thing. You might want something that's kind of going to get them focused and sitting down to start out with. And this is a little bit more in that vein. So if they get into the habit of just coming in, this is already up on the board, it can be just written out, and filling it out in their notebooks and filling in the blanks. So obviously I've chosen very easy things here. And based on whether, you know, if they're very familiar with words, you might want to blank out the entire word and see if they can predict it. If you've only talked about the word a couple of times, maybe give them a letter or two as a hint. But if it's a completely new word, obviously you don't want to blank anything out because they won't know it yet. So who can read the first sentence for me? Filling in the blank.
Yeah.
Carla.
Today's Monday, February 17th.
Oh, excellent job, Carla. Genius. Second sentence. Who would like to read it for me?
Well,
all right, about that here.
Hold on, that's a strong one.
The weather today is cold.
Cold. Catastrophic would also fit. The weather today is cold. No surprise. Next sentence. Sandra.
Today we will talk about writing activities.
Yes, very good. Okay. Now you'll see that the same word appears twice because we're going to be talking about it as a new topic in our class, but I blanked out different letters. So the next sentence, who would like to do that one?
Writing activities help students create written options.
Output.
Output.
Output. Okay, good. Written output. And the last one? Yes? Wow.
Reading models help students learn the form.
Good. Very nice. So this is something that you can take some different options about what you want to blank out, and once they get into the habit of doing this, it does become something that they just come in and sit down and do. This is especially useful if you have different arrival times, because the students that come first, they can sit right down and get started, and then the other ones coming in maybe, hopefully, will be a little quieter since they already see other people working. So it's a good habit to sort of get them into. And you don't always have to do it every class. Maybe you make a habit of doing it every Monday or once a week or whatever. Okay. So does everybody understand the basic idea behind this?
Yes.
You had a question?
Andy, I think it is helpful to show the students the structure of a paragraph.
Yeah, so this is...
Because you have introduction.
You do. Yeah. This isn't necessarily around one particular topic. Like, it's usually the morning message is just around, usually it's what's today, let's talk about the weather, or some other topic that we're discussing. And then it's an introduction to what activities you're going to be doing that day to kind of get them thinking. So usually that's the structure of each one. So they do get used to seeing that as well. Okay. Any other questions about that? So, as you might have guessed, we are going to talk about writing today for just a bit before we get some time to work on your final presentations and ask questions, because I was trying to figure it out mathematically, and if I give you an hour, I think that's only like 4 minutes per group, so we'll see how that works out. Did anybody have questions about the reading lecture that I posted last Thursday? Things that you weren't clear on or you wanted to follow up on?
The video that you posted.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't understand what is the parking lot that you do.
Okay, I didn't bring the poster today because I didn't know what we were going to end up talking about. But essentially, you have a large piece of paper, or you could even designate a spot on the blackboard. But basically, the parking lot, each person gets a Post-it note they write on the Post-it note and then they put it on that particular piece of the board. So if they made a connection, they would put their Post-it note under connections. If they asked a question, they would put their Post-it note under questions. But parking lots can also be used for other things. You can just make an available space on the board and leave some sticky notes, Post-its, and they can leave like general questions about class or suggestions, or if they want to bring up a problem, and they can be anonymous if you do that sort of thing. So it's sometimes a good way to get some other communication going. They sometimes feel comfortable.
This is related with something that they want to know or they are in doubt of.
Yeah, and usually it's just a way to kind of, if you're doing something that's a response to the reading, they should write their name on the Post-it note so that you can check to be sure they're following along with what's happening. If you use the parking lot as sort of an anonymous feedback zone, they would not have to put their name on it, and it would just be things that they want to communicate to you or to the rest of the class. Okay. Other questions?
So about the reading text, we must send you.
You do not have to, okay? We were going to share them in class and discuss them the same way we did with the movie-based activities. So if you have something that you want to send to share, great. But don't, waste a lot of time making something if you don't have it here, okay? If you've got something, send it. If you don't worry, okay? Other questions about the reading lecture? Okay, moving on then to writing. The first one that we're going to do is just, we're not going to really do much, but I just wanted to bring up the idea of online writing. And I know some of you have Facebook groups with your students. Who's got a Facebook group with their students? Okay, how do you guys use that? Is it just an open forum? It's not an assignment or anything else? What happens? Yes, Sandra?
I do have one, but sometimes I assign them some homework. I check something, and then, for example, every time they talk to me, I only reply if they speak to me in English. They write in English.
Okay. Okay. So you use it as a way to reinforce English.
And for example, something that they didn't understand in class, or something that they would like to know about a song, or some curiosities.
Okay. So follow up on things that you discussed in class.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. How do other people
Same
use
thing, I
it?
put curiosities about grammar or anything.
Okay.
The English,
Okay.
or they like information about exchange programs.
Okay.
I put something.
So cool things you find in English on the internet, information about opportunities for English practice. Yeah.
The groups, the students made a group.
Okay.
And they use for all subjects. And they sometimes, example, one student missed the class.
Why
So
do we
there is
have-
one that is responsible
there's
to take
some
picture of the homework on
Okay.
the board.
Okay.
And they post
Okay. So they
them.
use it to communicate with each other if
Communicate,
someone's missing,
yeah.
etc. Uh-huh.
I always publish some quotations.
You put quotes on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they can put it there. And if they have any problems, they get in touch with me.
Okay. So to contact you. Does anybody assign working on Facebook?
No.
Okay, so here's something to consider. Because they're on it anyway, pretty much most of them, I would guess. Something that you might want to consider, yeah?
I usually have some challenge. I post some challenge for them, and I ask them to share their ideas. And I give them 1 week, and after that, I give them the answer of the.
Okay.
And so I give some gifts, but just for the ones who tried to answer that challenge.
Okay, so there's like a challenge
So,
question
it's a
that they have to
challenge.
answer.
Yes.
And that's a good idea. I like that. It encourages sort of participation and
I give
discussion.
them 1 week.
1 week to find the answer?
Yeah.
Okay. Other things that you can do is to post discussion questions where they have to respond to something that you are asking them. And you may want to, if you're doing something like this, a brief discussion, and I'm sure most of you who have a group already have done this, a brief discussion about the rules of what can and cannot be said and done on Facebook would probably be a good idea if you're new to using it. But putting a question that they are required to answer, but then also requiring them to reply to another student's answer. I used to find that we generated some really good discussion this way. This was like pre-Facebook. We would use like discussion boards on like Yahoo or Google. But now Facebook makes it really easy because pretty much everyone has it. But if you post the original question, then they all must answer the question, but also respond to at least one other person's answer. It kind of starts generating a different, deeper level of discussion. And when you see those answers, it's another good way to sort of assess, are they understanding this? Are they not understanding it? Are there some questions here that are repeated that we maybe should address in class, because a lot of people seem to have the same question. And since they're already on Facebook anyway, that's usually a pretty good tool. If you want to think about doing a blog or something as well, that becomes just a bit more complex because they have to set it up. So while I really like that idea, they or you might not know how to set that up. So Facebook was just an easier way to go about doing that, since they pretty much all have that already. I think that's it about that. So any questions about using Facebook as a tool for discussion and writing? All right. The next one is a little bit different. We're going to try something called Follow the Model. And you guys are going to try it out now. So this is a combination of reading and writing. And it's really, really helpful for them to see models of good writing or models of a particular writing style before they try to write. So I like to use for this type of activity books with a very clear voice, which means it's really easy to identify who is writing this book, what the topic is, and the person has a very strong personality, or the character has a strong personality. So we're going to look at an example called Dear Mrs. LaRue, Letters from Obedience School. This book is really funny. It's about a dog whose owner sends him to obedience school. And he spends the whole time writing letters trying to convince the owner that he should get to come home. So it's funny, and there's a very clear and strong voice in it. So books like this can be really useful because they enjoy reading them, but they also really like following the style and the example. So you're going to follow the style and the example now. This book, besides having clear voice, also touches on persuasion, letter writing, so the format, dear so-and-so, comma, skip a space, write the letter, and then sequencing also. There's a very strong focus on sequencing work. So we're going to look at an example letter together, and then you're going to write your own letter, and I will ask you to share, okay? So here's our example. Okay, so there he is, he's in the hospital. Can you guys see the letter? Is there anyone who would like to read the letter aloud with feeling?
I can.
All right, it's about you, yes.
Dear Mrs. Lowry. LaRue. Okay, anyway. I have to tell you this, but I am terribly ill.
Could you let her read? Let's let her read. Okay.
It started in my paw, causing me to limp all day. Later, I felt wheezy in that I could barely eat dinner, except for the yummy gravy. Then I began to moan and howl. Finally, I had to be taken to the vet. Dr. Wilfred claims that he can't find anything wrong with me, but I am certain I have an awful disease. I must come home at once. Honestly yours,
Okay. So what do you notice about this letter? How do you start a letter? What word starts a letter?
Dear.
Dear. And then what?
The
name of the person you're writing to. And what comes after the person's name?
A comma.
A comma. Good. What's wrong with Ike? everything.
Yes.
Everything. He's sick. He wants to go home. He's like Brazilian. He's just sick of this and wants to go home.
That's adorable.
And how does he close the letter?
Honestly yours.
Honestly yours. Okay, so this is called we have the greeting at the beginning, and do you know what the thing at the end is called?
How to say goodbye, a good way, a polite way of saying goodbye.
Formally.
Salutation.
Salutation.
So, honestly yours, comma, and then the letter writer's name. So right now, I would like you to pretend that you are Ike, trying to escape from dog obedience school. And you must write a letter to your dear owner, Mrs. LaRue, trying to give her a couple of reasons, one or two, that you should get to come home immediately. Okay? Now, you can probably channel your own feelings right now in order to help you write this letter. Okay? I'm not going to give you a long time because this is just an example, but I will ask to hear just one or two for fun. So I'll give you about 5 minutes. Try to be creative. Come up with some good, convincing words to get Mrs. LaRue to let you come home.
Mr. LaRue?
Mrs. LaRue. You may change the name, sure.
Change?
You can change the names.
Yeah, my parents are. My parents because.
Yes?
Individually.
Individually. Individually. Have fun. Thank you. Okay, you got 2 minutes to finish your masterpiece.
Yeah, I'll probably end up doing those after my presentations because now I'm starting to get all of the presentations afterwards.
You are going to reply.
For sure.
All right, who would like to share? Carlos really wants to share his. Carlos and Reese, we'll hear two.
Okay. Dear Nicole,
Oh.
for goodness sake, I'm not feeling so well today. And I think I will have to start from scratch. I guess I have a flea in my back. And it is really difficult for me to reach it.
Mhm.
The doctors say I am kind of allergic to work. But since it's not true, I recognize that that flea is driving me crazy. So please, come and pick me up, for I have been missing you all.
Oh.
Yours, I.
Oh, very good, very nice. I like the imaginary flea. Yeah, please.
Dear Mr. Brazil, I'm a poor dog that is lost in the United States. I'm ill and my paw is freezing all day long in Delaware. I see no beauty in white snow over here and I'm almost crying of saudade. Please, Mr. Brazil, receive my body and soul within your armor heart, colorful days of summer.
You will be back so soon. You will be back. Very good. You'll go home and you'll think, oh, I missed the snow.
Yes. Maybe.
So, part of writing, is providing models that the students can follow, and things like this that are sort of inherently entertaining for them are good places to start, and they're very structured as well. So, that was just one thing I wanted to mention to you to give you a heads up on. We already did that. The next thing is poetry. Does anybody work on poetry with their students? Maybe.
Worked in Portuguese?
In Portuguese.
Because I taught Portuguese for some time. And at school, I have worked with haiku.
Haiku. So having these sort of really structured models can be good writing activities because they don't take a lot of time. Like something like haiku, it's very short. And there are other types of poetry where you can give them lots of structure. For example, here, I put up a shape poem. Students love doing these, where the poem gets made into the shape of the object they are writing about. So this poem was about a person's hand, and they wrote the poem in the shape of a hand. So they like doing these, and there are even poems, shape poems, where the similar words get repeated over and over again. if you want to try poetry, it actually releases lots of weird creative energy. Like they get really into it when you might not think they would. I put a bunch of stuff up onto the website, and we're going to go there really quickly just to, just so I can show you the things that are there. These are all different types of poetry. Hold on.
Nicole,
Yeah.
all of us want to know which cities the
Picture. Where is it?
Somebody sent it to me, but it's
Bahia.
Salvador, I think, yeah.
Pelourinho.
Or Diamantina.
Pelourinho, Bahia.
I don't know. It's in Brazil.
Sorry.
Moving on. So I posted these particular assignments up because they're already ready to go. So if you wanted to try some, and they're very, if you look at them, you'll see that they're pretty structured. So there's a poem called Street Music, which this goes off of, and I'll show you it's how structured it actually is, if I can get it to open. There we go. So there's a poem called Street Music, which you'll find, but there's a template for it. So it's this school, the always noise, verb ending in ing from the place, verb ending in ing from thing, a thing, okay, and more things in all. So it gives very structured way to write the poem based on an example poem. So if you're just kind of experimenting with things, you can look for poems that are focusing on a specific grammatical point, or poems that are particularly descriptive if you're focusing on adjectives or describing things or places or people. And they can be really good creative outlets for them. And they tend to be a little quicker than writing things like essays and paragraphs. And they do like them. So it's just an option that's out there for you.
In Portuguese, we call this, I don't know if it's the same language, it's metalinguism. It's kind of, you talk about the subject, you're doing with the, for example, you say verbing, but you're doing a poetry with the subject that you want.
Yeah, so you're talking about the grammatical form. Yeah. So getting them to be aware of those particular forms and discussing it. Yeah, that's another. Yeah. So there's a bunch of different samples up there that are already ready that you can adapt and use if you want to give it a try and see what they think. And I put up there as well the book Love That Dog, if you can find it. The whole book is written in poetry, but it's very simple and pretty accessible for ESL students. And it has examples of famous poems in it and how this particular student adapts the poems to fit his life. So it kind of already shows them how someone can change a poem to make it apply to them. So it gives them two models almost, the original plus an adapted for them to look at. And it's really cool. It's a great story. You will cry, I'm going to warn you right now, but it's really good. The next thing we're going to try is found treasures. So I'm going to get you into 6 groups, and we look to have what's really groups of 4 and 5. Each group is going to receive a bag of treasures. They all have different treasures in them, okay? And your job is to write a short biography. What's a biography?
The person's story.
The person's story. What does bio mean? What's graph mean? Written, writing, yeah, good. So, writing about the person's life who left the treasures. You will have to negotiate together to write this biography. I'm going to have you guys just write one. You might allow your students to each write one and then talk about what they've come up, the differences with the objects, okay? And it's kind of fun to see how many different stories and ideas come from the same bag of treasures. because sometimes if you have 5 students in a group, you'll have 5 completely different stories. So what I would like for you to do now is group yourself into 6 groups. 6 groups. I don't really care how big they are, there's 4 to 5 is probably ideal. How are you? What are these? Wait, that should be 2, because I already have the workers over here. So the 2, you guys got there, you have 2. How are you guys? Number 3, 1 Please wait. Don't open it yet. Okay, so when I say go, which I have not done yet, you will open the bag. Okay? You then have 10 minutes, because this is a little more difficult, to try to figure out what the items might have in common, how they could all come from the same person, why this person might have these items, what they would do with them, what is their life like. Okay, so you're going to write a story. Are you ready to open the bag?
We're gonna use the
You must talk about each object in the paragraph. Okay? Ready? Go. Oh, you guys guessed the one that could be open to some interesting information.
Let's review
Let's see what they have.
City Hall. City Hall.
She has craft balance, perfume, and Korean chill. This group has a pirate eye patch, kazoo, and toothpaste. And this group has an Oscar statuette, a feather, and a ticket. And this group has sunglasses, a nut, and puppets.
Yes, fake sunglasses.
This is the activity found treasures.
But if she didn't like it, then
About 5 minutes left?
English teacher was married, then we got
It's not fake. No, maybe the fake is. False is a picture. No, false. There's another name. Okay. False has more. Not fake.
Alright, 1 minute. If you're finished, see if you can add some interesting details.
This man was
Alright, wrap it up. Even if you're not finished, it's okay. Okay, so what you're going to do, because time is up. Okay, so what I would like you to do before you start your story is please tell us which 3 objects you had, and then please share the story that you came up with. Is there a group who would like to go first with their objects and their story?
We have
Okay, all right.
we have a bonbon, I don't know what that is.
Feather.
And a ticket for bike.
Okay.
And not the Oscar, but the Oscar.
Mini Oscar.
Mini Oscar prizes.
Okay.
Stars.
Okay. And what's your story? What's the story that you came up with?
Yeah, sure.
Patrick Swayze. He was a drag king in the movie Priscilla, the Queen of the Desert. He passed away last year after his performance at the UT Theater in New York. He was a great actor that won several prizes for the performance of several movies like Dirty Dancing and Priscilla, the Queen of the Desert. He learned how to dance with his mom.
Great. So they decided it was Patrick Swayze. Over there. Very nice. Thank you. Would you like to be next? I would never have thought of that. Yes. Okay. Objects first.
all the basic foods.
That's a crab. You use it to crack crab.
And, okay, what is this?
And the story? Okay.
Everybody can listen. Anne Lee was born in Shanghai in 1970. She is married and has only one daughter. When she was 17 years old, she was a top model, and she was the cover girl of a famous perfume called Shanghai Moon. Nowadays, she's the owner of a Chinese restaurant on the Bay Seafood, and is very well qualified chef. Her restaurant is very famous, and she pleasures her customers with a handmade souvenir.
Very nice. A restaurant tour. Yes, all right. The back. Objects.
Bracelet.
Okay, bracelet. CD.
English course.
An English CD. Okay.
And
And stamps. Stamps.
Okay.
Nice and loud.
Samantha Alves. She's 40 years old, single. She was born in Brazil, English profissionais. She has been teaching English as a second language as an English course for about 10 years. She likes to motivate her students standing excellent in the She always travels abroad. Last year, she got a bracelet in New York on the 46th Street. She loves shiny accessories. Now she is on a very special program at the University of Delaware. She was chosen among 3,000 teachers to come to the U.S. in order to improve her English teaching methodology. She has been invited to work as a teacher assistant. She will be working with the greatest professor at the ELI, her name is Nicole.
A plus.
For a period of 2 years, she loves writing, and she has already written 2 children's books. She is fabulous.
She is fat. What a lovely girl. Okay.
Dom Juan, sorry, a CD, an Italian CD.
Do you ever ask yourself, all of these things were in my office.
Really? You have to tell us the story.
Most of the time, you guys know what I usually teach, right? Drama. Yeah. This is all stuff that's come from like drama plays that we've done. I'm sorry, it's not as exciting as
Dom Juan was born in Italy in 1989, and he has always been inspired by romantic stories. The first love of his life was his English teacher. In 2000, he decided to record a CD in her honor. The CD was a failure. She didn't accept his love. So he fell into a terrible depression and decided to be a criminal. Months later, he was arrested. He committed suicide in prison. The teacher felt guilty and decided to take a red rose to his home.
Very creative. And you left very tragic. Okay.
And
Puppet.
Hi. And then fake ravens.
Okay.
So, his name is João da Silva. He was born in Minas Gerais in 1990. He is a poor guy. He is he's short and he's he makes his living selling fake sunglasses and Mickey's nuts. He works in the traffic lights in São Paulo. He performs with a puppet socks
to the drivers to earn extra money.
Do you guys remember the São Paulo people?
Traffic lights, traffic lights. So many different performances.
Everybody just try to wash your hands. They also do that. All right, very good. Thank you. And last but not least, Pirate Duo. So what are your other items?
I said,
What is this?
kazoo.
Toothpaste.
And
And eye patch. Once upon a time, there was a pirate called Captain Jack Sparrow. He sailed the Black Pearl to the end of the world. Through all those years, he never brushed his teeth, so he didn't know how to use the toothpaste properly. In order to keep the mermaids away, he played the kazoo. During a hard battle, he lost the right eye, so he had to wear an eye patch to cover it. During a horrible gale, his ship capsized and he vanished.
Very good. Joel has a second career as a movie announcer.
Yeah.
All right, very good. So, this is kind of just a fun activity that the students are really motivated by it, especially if you put really neat stuff in the bag. If you wouldn't mind, please put the objects back into the bag so that I can take them back. You never know when you're going to need handcuffs. And you can put your chairs back the regular way. Thank you. The last thing that I have done that my students really enjoyed that I just wanted to share with you was becoming the character. So reading a simple story together. A chapter book is good. They make a lot of pretty decent chapter books that are easy to read, leveled readers. Like I said, you might even consider scanning one or two before you leave from the SALC. But what gets really fun is if you have them replace the main character with themselves and then change other names in the story in relation to their life. So one that I did with my students was called Marvin Redcoast, and he was in the story and his teacher was also in the story. So they replaced it with their name and their friends' names, and they rewrote the story as if they were the main character. So they're kind of gaining, they can't possibly rewrite the whole thing, it would be too long. So they're getting practice with summarizing, finding the main ideas and putting that together. They're also sometimes changing like from third person to first person, or you could do it in the other direction as well. If it's written in first person, you could have them change it to third. They can change other stylistic things as well, but the main ideas should stay the same. And then what's really fun is to have them make their own book and take pictures of themselves as the character and put their own pictures into the story. And if you can even get them printed out and like make a little library of books, it's really fun, and they have something to look at and sort of a product to take home. This is a long-term project if you read a chapter book and then make it into a book. But it's something that can kind of incorporate a lot of different elements into it. So if you kind of build some grammar, some writing, some reading, some vocabulary all into the project, then you can be working on multiple skills at once. So just another idea for you. So any questions about any of the activities we talked about today? No? So we have about an hour and 15 minutes, which is actually good. I have a little extra, more than I thought. And the rest of the time,